Tonight, we can report the biggest bust ever of fentanyl, which killed about 18,000 Americans last year and was blamed in the death of music star Prince. A produce truck came across the border from Mexico, and on the second round, in a secret compartment, they found this: 254 pounds of deadly synthetic opioid, street value $3.5 million, estimated to be enough to kill 57 million people, because it takes that tiny an amount in some cases for some people to be killed by this substance. So the truck, as I said, was undergoing a secondary scan. Dogs picked up the scent. The rear floor of this tractor trailer, as it came through one of these ports of entry, was ripped up. They found more drugs on the Mexican driver in the forms of bags of pills. So joining me now on that and other big news tonight in the prescription drug arena, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar. Secretary Azar, thank you very much for being here tonight. This is precisely the kind of thing that the president talks about when you look at the drug trade that does come across at these ports of entry.
You bet, Martha, and I am very grateful to our colleagues in the Border Patrol for their efforts that led to this historic interdiction. I'm also grateful to President Trump for fighting for border security and for fighting to reverse this horrible opioid crisis. You know, this fentanyl, that's a historic amount of fentanyl. Think of how many Americans could be killed by that. Fentanyl's already killing so many Americans every single day as part of this opioid crisis.
What do you say to those who, we played a little bit of it in the intro, who say, it's not a border wall that is needed. It's these drugs come through the port of entry, so that wouldn't have any impact on that.
Well, drugs come through everywhere, just like people do. You need border security. You can't just declare that here's the one place to bring your illegal drugs across. We need border security, and that's what President Trump is fighting for.
All right. Tell me about the big change that came. The president and you have worked on the issue of rising drug prices in this country and these crazy questions of why people end up paying more and more every single year when January comes. What did you do today, and what's the impact on regular Americans?
Well, Martha, I'm going to let you in on a little secret, as well as your viewers. When you show up at the pharmacy to buy a drug that has a price of $300, and you're paying $300 or a percent of that $300, there's somebody in the background called a pharmacy benefit manager or a middleman, and they're getting a kickback from the drug company based on your purchase, and that might be $60, $80, or $100. And what President Trump is proposing tonight is that you, the patient, should get that discount when you buy the drug at the pharmacy. So you save that money, not the middlemen.
How's he going to achieve that? I mean, won't they just find another way to move that money around so that they're still benefiting from it?
No. See, what we're doing is we're proposing to change the rules of the road that say right now, you can, as a drug company, give these kickbacks to these pharmacy benefit managers, and we would, under this proposal, outlaw that. And instead, you would have to provide those discounts to the patient when the patient shows up at the pharmacy. So you, the patient, get these savings. So think about how many drugs that you're buying now in January, after your deductible reset in the calendar year, the issue you just talked about, Martha. You show up and you're bearing the full cost of that drug. Well, someone in the back, they're getting a discount on that. You're not getting it. You're paying full price. Next year, January 1st, under this proposal, you would get that discount. You wouldn't pay as much out of pocket when you walk in the pharmacy.
And you know, the proof of that may be in the fact that CVS and Cigna shares both tumbled on the news of this because they benefit from these pharmacy management programs. Just a quick question before I let you go. Kamala Harris wants to do away with all the insurance companies. Would that have any impact on this?
Well, I'll just say, as a general matter, these ideas of Medicare for all will threaten to undermine those of our senior citizens on Medicare, the sacred promise that we have to them and their program, as well as to really undermine or even take away the private insurance that over 140 million Americans have through their employer and they're quite happy with. You know, when they came up with Obamacare, they falsely promised that if you liked your insurance, you could keep it. Nobody's even making that promise with these Medicare for all slogans.
Secretary Azar, thank you very much. Good to have you on the story tonight.
And President Trump criticizing Virginia's governor for defending a proposed third trimester abortion bill.
if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
Well, Virginia's bill, which ultimately failed, comes after New York's own late-term abortion bill became a law. So are liberal states competing to be the biggest champions of pro-choice? Here to weigh in is RNC spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Anytime, Heather.
So this is so troubling, and there was a huge outpouring, a response on social media yesterday, really across the board. What do you make of what's happening?
You know, the right has predicted this for quite some time, that the logical endpoint of the radical left was infanticide, and we heard it straight from the mouth of the so-called moderate governor from Virginia, who is in essence a radical leftist by proposing this. This is very scary, Heather, and if morality doesn't convince the left that this is wrong, that it is wrong to kill a baby outside of the womb, then perhaps public polling will, and public polling indicates that 81%, Heather, 81%, think about that. It's hard to get 50% of this country to agree on anything, but 81% think abortion in the last 3 months is wrong.
Yeah.
So they're running afoul of the American people here, no doubt.
Let's take a look at this. This is another poll that questions whether abortion should be made available. 15% say that it should be available at any time during pregnancy, which in essence is what this does. 9% say the first 6 months, 27% the first 3 months, 28% only in certain cases, and then 10% only to save the life of a mother, and 10% say that it should never be permitted.
That's right. And, you know, just last week in the wake of New York's law, I was arguing with folks that if you look on Cleveland Clinic's website, it says at 6 months, your baby coming out of the womb can live, can exist without the mother. We cannot abort babies at 6 months. Now we are arguing that you cannot abort them at 9 months. A fully developed human being with a heartbeat, with a personality, with the stamp of God on it. This is so, so sad, so horrifying that this is the point we're at in this country. And President Trump warned about this long ago.
Yeah, it was so horrifying that people were scratching their heads saying, we have to be reading this the wrong way. This can't possibly be what this says, but in fact it does. You were mentioning Northam's response to the criticism. Here's what he said on Twitter. He said, I have devoted my life to caring for children, and any insinuation otherwise is shameful and disgusting. But then let's also talk about what President Trump said that you just referenced. This was during a debate in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. Listen.
If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby.
There you go. You're right. I mean, he was talking about it in 2016. He was elected president. This is yet another, issue that he ran on. He talked about, and then when he's trying, other people are now trying to block what people elected to be in office.
That's exactly right. President Trump warned about this, and the Democrats used to say back in the Clinton era in the 90s that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. But now it's always, often, and after the baby is even outside of the womb. And make no mistake, this happens more often than you think. National Review had a great piece up, a sad piece, that shows nearly 15,000 babies a year are aborted at this level, at this place in pregnancy. And it's more than all gun homicides in this country in total, many of them not because of the health of the mother. So this is not safe, legal, and rare. It is often.
Yeah, and this is something that should definitely be a bipartisan issue. People very upset about it from both sides of the aisle. Thank you so much, Kayleigh. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Heather.
All right.
Another New York national precedent will be established, the most aggressive women's equality platform in the nation is going to be in law in this state. And that's the way it should be.
New York passing a sweeping abortion law, allowing many abortions up until the day of the baby's birth. The move sparking outcry all across the country, with many Americans asking, how is this okay?
All right, here to weigh in is New York City's Archbishop, Cardinal Timothy Dolan. Cardinal Dolan, we thought of you right away because there's a Catholic governor cheering the fact that abortion would be legal in this state up until almost birth.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Please never use the word weigh in when I come on. I asked you to avoid that term.
Right.
Listen, no, thanks, Brian, for bringing it up. Ghoulish, grisly, gruesome, these are the words that people, independent observers, are using about this so-called Reproductive Health Act. The fact that he's a Catholic, as far as I'm concerned, has nothing to do with it. Any thinking human being that would want a baby, allow a baby to be aborted right up to the moment of birth, any thinking, thoughtful, considerate human being that would think that a baby could be, the abortion procedure could go forward without proper medical care, as now doctors don't have to be there. Anybody that thinks that a baby who survives the gruesome abortion procedure and that a doctor is no longer required to attempt to save that baby's life, you don't have to be a Catholic to abhor those kind of things. I like what, remember Governor Casey in Pennsylvania? He's been gone about 20 years. So here's a liberal Democrat who said, a Catholic by the way, who said, I didn't learn abortion was wrong in the catechism. I learned abortion was wrong in my biology books, in my study of law, particularly the Declaration of Independence and the 14th Amendment, and in ordinary common sense and human reason. This is just awful, and I don't know why we would brag about this. What bothers me, it used to be that our opponents, when it would come to pro-life, would say, look, we want to keep abortion safe, legal, and rare. They no longer find it a regrettable procedure. Right. They want it safe, legal, and rare. Are you kidding? Now it's going to become dangerous. The doctor's not even has to do it. It's going to become enforced because people with conscientious objection to this hideous procedure, healthcare workers, and there are many, are now going to have to do it, and it's going to become frequent. So safe, legal, and rare, forget it. It's now dangerous, it's now enforced, and it's now frequent. This is not good for our country. How could we brag about that? You pop champagne corks for that and drink Chablis and eat brie?
Well, look
you
at that.
light up the Empire State Building?
Right, look at those images that we just put up, Cardinal.
Just somebody cheering about it? I don't get it.
Just the fact that the baby can be born alive and then they can terminate it. There are calls from people in the Catholic Church for Governor Cuomo to be excommunicated from the Catholic Church.
You're telling me. I get wheelbarrows of letters every day. I think that would be counterproductive myself. For one...
Well, he's not following Catholic doctrine.
Well, I don't know if but there's my point, Steve. We would be giving ammo to our enemies who say, this is an internal Catholic disciplinary matter. This is really not civil rights. This is really not biology. These Catholics don't have freedom when it comes to this. I think we'd be giving our enemies ammo.
But the Catholic Church, Cardinal, stands against abortion. And here is the most prominent Catholic in the state of New York, and he's saying, this is a good thing.
And the canon laws, which you, thank you, quoted, would also say that you have to use it for a medicinal purpose, and you think that there's going to be a good effect that can come out of this. We have a governor that brags about it. We have a governor that uses his dissent from church teaching as applause lines. In fact, we have a governor that takes quotes from Pope Francis out of context to draw an artificial cleavage between the bishops of New York and the Holy Father himself. He's not going to be moved by this. So what would be the use?
Here's his quote. He said this in response to the criticism he's getting. He says, I've experienced that all my political life. I experienced that when I said a woman had a right to choose. I experienced that at an exponential level when New York was the first large state to pass marriage equality against the Catholic Church. So they've been against me on all of these issues.
And what did he get? A standing ovation.
Yep.
So he likes this. He likes being the PEC's bad boy when it comes to the Catholic Church. And
what about denying him communion?
Well, look, that's a... you're making me, I don't rarely get restless, but I am. That's kind of a pastoral issue that I think one has to talk to him about, and I think proper people have. And I'd be uncomfortable going into that, rather spiritual and pastoral, but that's a good point. Not denying him, he may have already said, I cannot approach.
Well, let me ask you something from a medical standpoint. We interviewed a doctor who agreed with another doctor who said that it's more dangerous on the mother to abort a baby in the third trimester. He said it is better for her care to just deliver the baby. the problem, and then you think about all these moms that want babies and can't have them, you know, and these babies could be placed in wonderful homes.
Ainsley, that's another good point. Thanks for bringing it up. I'm saying, can't we work together for some positive mitigation of an unfettered abortion license? Can't we make adoption easier? Can't we help?
Yes, adoption easier.
Yeah, can't we make troubled moms and dads who are struggling through a pregnancy, can't we make it a little easier for them with the provision of medical care, with time off if they need it? Can't we help mothers with newborns a bit more? All these things, can't we at least say that people who find this a hideous procedure do not have to attend to it, a doctor or a nurse? Can't we at least say that if we know for sure that the heart is beating, abortion would not be allowed? The other side
these
wants
babies feel pain.
no
Don't
compromise.
these babies at the third trimester, don't they feel pain?
That's right, and what you said too, physicians tell me that. You know, it'd be safer to say, Mom, if you want an abortion, go ahead and give birth to the baby, and then we'll terminate the baby. That, of course, is infanticide, but it's what we got now.
But what would you say, Cardinal, how do you stand, or does the Catholic Church stand on when the mom's life is in danger, where it's medically dangerous for her, when you have to make maybe that choice?
Ainsley, the physicians that you talk to say these days that's not too frequent. These days there's so many alternatives that does not happen. The Catholic Church would have a very rigorous pro-life stance that you could never, ever terminate the life of an innocent person, ever. Okay, whether that be in war, whether that be
the mother has cancer and the cancer's come back.
You could never purposefully kill the baby. There's enough there's enough thoughtful room there that there can be ways to save the life of both. Please,
Cardinal,
God.
Clearly this law is a political calculation.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're going to talk directly to Governor Cuomo, but you know what? This is going to be on YouTube, your appearance. What would you like him to know about how you feel about this?
I would say, look, Governor, you and I have worked for a lot of time for common good, and this is one area that we could. But this is hideous. Do not brag about making the state of New York the abortion capital of the world. That is not an enlightened progressive posture. An enlightened progressive posture is that you take care of the smallest, most defenseless, innocent human beings, and I can't think of one more than the baby in the womb.
Cardinal,
let's work together to protect that life.
Cardinal, what do you say to the parents out there that need some Christian advice, godly wisdom about raising kids in an environment like this? I mean, we live in New York City. I'm raising my daughter. I love the city, but the beliefs in the city are counter to many of the things that I grew up learning.
Are they ever?
So how do we raise our kids in this community now?
I just had a baptism yesterday on Sunday, which I try to do every Sunday. And one of the lines is to the parents and say, you are the first and the best of teachers. Don't give schools, the environment, TV, social media, don't give them sway over your kids. You are their first and primary teachers by your example and by your words, and count on people to do it. Make sure they have nurturing friends. Make sure they have the environment of a church. Make sure they have a school where their values are going to be buttressed and not thrown out the window. I was so sad to see Mrs. Pence be criticized because she teaches in a school that's based on biblical values. Does not the education of kids become first? Is that not the first priority of the mom and dad? Yeah, we need strong public schools to do that, to help us, but we don't let them take over when it comes to values.